All right, so my name is Benjamin Regal, and I have chosen to do my presentation on the Chevron Corporation for the Global Activity number 2. So, first of all, what is the Chevron Corporation? So the Chevron Corporation, they manufacture and sell a variety of refined oil products, primary ones being gasoline, diesel, as well as like marine and aviation fuels. They also sell like the base oil, different lubricants, as well as fuel additives. They don't really have a lot of new or innovative products that they come out with, mostly revisions, new and improved versions of their current product line. Sometimes they'll have like a new fuel additive or something that really isn't very different from much else on the market. Um, so they're also one of the only two fuel brands in the world that are top tier certified, which is actually it's a range of tests that the fuel must go through in order to see how it affects different parts of an engine, such as like the intakes valves, the combustion chamber, the fuel injectors. It also has to be able to prevent sticking of the intake valves, and it is one of only two companies that has passed that test. Let's see. So, and then how did it start? So it was actually the Pacific Oil Company, which began when Taylor and a group of like other explorers and merchants that were ended up being his investors. They established the Pacific Oil Company on September 10th of 1879. And this is actually during the time when a lot of people were rushing to California looking for, what they call black gold, looking for oil. A lot of people were remembering the gold rush of several years earlier, and were treating oil in much the same way. But unlike most other Californians, Taylor actually found what he was looking for, and his Pico well number 4 that was in the canyons north of Los Angeles soon became the state's most productive oil well. Then, actually, in 1961, the Pacific Coast Oil Company actually merged with the Standard Oil Company. And this is interesting because the Standard Oil Company, which was founded by John D. Rockefeller, was actually at one point a monopoly that controlled 90% of the U.S. oil refining industry, which is pretty crazy. They had a board of directors and a trust, so they kind of moved around from state to state to avoid getting prosecuted for antitrust laws. But yeah, they were a monopoly. And then they actually officially became Chevron. They got that name in 1977. It's actually a brand, or like the image and logo that had appeared on a lot of their products, and was one of the ones that was most distinctive to them. A lot of people around the world recognize their products because of that Chevron logo, and so it was a pretty easy choice to choose that for their name going forward. And I believe that was in the 1930s is when that first appeared on their products. So, now where is the Chevron Corporation? Well, it's all over the place. It's active in more than 180 countries, and it's basically engaged in every aspect of the oil industry, from exploration, looking for new oil sites, producing, getting that oil, um, you know oil, drilling for that oil, refining it, marketing it, transporting it. They also do a lot with different chemicals, manufacturing and sales, as far as different things that can be produced from that crude oil, and then power generation. Um, so they are all over the place, but they are based out of their headquarters in San Ramon, California. And they own 5 U.S. fuel refineries, and they have a pretty wide network of Texaco and Caltex branded service stations in the United States. They also have some Chevron branded service stations as well. So, and how big are they? Well, they are pretty big. They are the fourth largest non-government energy company, and the third largest oil company in the world. They're also a oligopoly, which, because they are one of the six super major oil companies, which are BP, Shell, Chevron, Total, Eni, and Exxon. And you know, together these six companies control a vast majority of all of the oil supply in the world, and so it does function much like an oligopoly. And I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. It also, in 2021, they had a workforce of 42,595 people, which is actually lower. I think their peak was in 2014. They had 64,700 people that they employed. But they are actually now the largest U.S. oil company. In 2020, they overtook, the Texas-based Exxon Mobil Corp, and became the largest oil company in America by market value. And I find it interesting that they've spent more than $15 million on lobbying, especially since they only started lobbying in 2011. Prior to that, they did not do any. And $15 million is a lot of money going into the pockets of our politicians. All right, so, and what's their environmental impact? Now, they, of course, have a lot of impact indirectly through the products that they provide and how those are used, whether they're burned in internal combustion engines or whatnot. But as far as directly, they have done a lot to reduce their environmental impact. They've reduced flaring by more than 60% since 2016, as well as their methane emissions. They've also dropped by nearly 50% since 2016. And they've tried to, hold themselves accountable by tying their executive and employee compensation to the goals, the certain goals that they've set for their environmental impact. And it's a part of, what they call their 2028 carbon intensity reduction targets. And essentially what they're trying to do is drive their combined oil and natural gas carbon intensity to be about 35% less than what it was in 2016. All right, and why did I choose the Chevron Corporation? Well, one of the major reasons I chose it is because of its previous ties to the Standard Oil Company and John D. Rockefeller. He was always someone I found interesting in history class, especially with the just the overwhelming monopoly that he had on the oil industry for quite some time. And then also, the current oil and gas market, of course, made an oil company come to mind relatively easily. I also have, a distaste for the environmental impacts of gasoline, and would really like to see us as a country and even internationally move away from using internal combustion engines as much as we do. I also find it fascinating the amount of sway that big oil has on politics. That number I gave, $15 million since 2011 that they've spent on lobbying. That's a lot of money, and that's that's enough money to start changing people's minds. And it's not just Chevron. They're one of many companies with a large market share that are able to sway politicians. And that is all I have. So these are my sources that I used for this presentation, and thank you for your time.